not an intellectual pursuit by any means. It's really a time to turn our attention completely to our immediate experience. Here it is all to be found. So we just finished a workaday session on the theme of Kshante Paramita, the perfection of patience. So the session itself, of course, gives us a chance to exercise patience. We met every morning from 6 to 7 a.m. and then again in the evenings from 6 to 9 p.m. And then yesterday for a number of hours. So most days we did about 4 hours of meditation. So we were considering the perfection of patience, Kshante Paramita. When we use the word perfection in this context, it's a reference to the 6 paramitas of the Mahayana Buddhist tradition. The Mahayana is the stream of Buddhist practice that emphasizes achieving awakening for the sake of all beings, not just for our own liberation. And a deep appreciation of the paramitas leads us even further to achieve liberation for the sake of the truth, the sake of truth. We begin by practicing for the sake of ourselves, for our own awakening. We continue to practice for the sake of the Sangha. And then finally, we practice for the sake of truth. That's a big word, truth. So let's look first more completely at the meaning of the word perfection as it's used in this context. It points towards paying attention to the source of our life, for our vitality and for the authenticity of our being. The source in this present situation, in the particularities of this moment, every moment. This is always the source. This is where we look for the source. And so when we work on the perfection, we're talking about being perfectly present. Paramita. Paramita is a Sanskrit term, which means that which has gone beyond, or what is transcendent. Transcendent. What does it transcend? We have to ask. When we talk about something being a transcendent truth, what is it transcending? We translate the Sanskrit paramita into English as perfection, which comes from the Latin per, P-E-R, which means through or complete, and then facere, to do. So together this means to do completely, or as we like to say in Zen, to realize, as in to make real, to actualize. It's kind of curious, when we use that word realize, we're always talking about realizing something. To stop and think, realizing, making real. That which goes beyond and is transcendent is real, is actualized. This is how we approach the perfections. The ordinary meaning of the word perfect is something like ideal. Ordinarily, when something exactly matches our expectation or what we've wished for, we might say, oh, perfect. That's just what I wanted. And if it isn't just what we want, then there's dissatisfaction that comes along. This is kind of the human condition. Perfect, just what I wanted. And then you want to hold on to it. You don't want it to go away. There's always dissatisfaction in that kind of perfect. But the meaning of perfect, as it's laid out in the Paramitas, isn't that ordinary meaning. It's a particular meaning. Instead, it refers to the ways that we enact freedom, that we actualize freedom from suffering through the exercise of patience, energy, mindfulness, generosity, diligence, and understanding. These are the 6 paramitas. And without these qualities being expressed in our behaviors and actively practiced with, these paramitas are just concepts. They're just more of the words. We know them as perfections only as we live them and realize them and manifest their capacity in action, as we're animated by them in our ongoing daily life. So again, patience, generosity, morality, vigor, concentration, and wisdom. And then there are 4 more that were added along the way to make the 10 paramitas. So sometimes you see the paramitas referred to as the 6 and sometimes as the 10. And the 4 additional ones are skillful means, aspiration or vow, bala, spiritual power or strength, and jnana, knowledge, realization. Wikipedia described that as a cognitive event which is recognized when experienced. So that, in other words, when we're present, we become aware of something when we are present to it. We realize it. So that's the list. Now, what about the spirit of the perfections? Because that's really what our concern is here. It's always essential to come back to to what we're doing in the practice, what the spirit of this practice is all about. And the spirit is what liberates, not the words. The words are like endless. And it's just how we live them, how we realize these teachings that make the difference. What it's about in a living way. If our vow is to live with awake awareness, it's always an ongoing process. It's continuous awakening. There's no arriving other than arriving freshly each moment. There's no arriving. There's no, we practice without a gaining idea. There's nothing to be gained. It's just how we live. But we can forget that and get distracted by our habits and our opinions, and the agitation of thought in everyday life. The agitation of thought. And we can forget. We can forget to really pay attention to the direct source in our experience. The intimate, the immediate moment. Just as it is. There's an old Zen proverb. If the rope is short, it won't reach far enough to draw water from a deep spring. That's a great image. If the rope is short, it won't reach far enough to draw water from a deep spring. So practicing Zazen, is dipping our ever lengthening rope down deeply into the spring from which this moment arises. So we finished this workaday sesshin on the theme of Kshanti Paramita, the perfection of patience. And even with a sesshin like this, which is not the usual full-on sesshin, because we go to work in the middle of the day, Things get so much clearer during sesshin, during sustained and intensive practice. Sesshin is like the deep well, and we bring our short rope to it. And increasingly, we become aware of the refreshment that awaits us in the depths of the spring, the depths of the well. We can smell it, we can taste it, we can hear it, we can see it in every moment. This well that's right beneath our feet, nowhere but right here, right within our immediate experience. We just need to reach down with awareness, reach into, be present with our awareness. So when working with patience, we could clearly see that patience is a nice long rope, a rope that reaches to whatever depth is needed at the moment. Patience in the past and patience in the future is to no avail. Only in this moment is the life that we're actually living. This is where we find it. This is where it finds us. Patience represents it's a word that represents a quality of being, but is not the quality itself until it's experienced, realized in the body, realized in the mind, and isn't just conceptual. When I'm patient, my body is still. My breath flows right here and now. The mind is allowed to quiet and accommodates the current experiences, the current circumstances. Being patient, we accommodate what is, rather than fussing and trying to turn it into something else. So we can turn our attention right now to our bodies and put our foot entirely on the brake of the chattering mind, just for now, to be right here, right now, just as it is, with nothing calling beyond just this, nothing separate in the mind that requires hurry or being somewhere else. How do you experience this in the body? What does it feel like? What does patience feel like? That's practicing the perfection of patience. And the beauty of studying the Paramitas is that they're a reliable source of inspiration for the practice of just this. If we were to say, what is Zen? Just this. If the rope is short, it won't reach far enough to draw water from a deep spring. The Paramitas don't have any fixed content or material dimension, but only extend in a living way as we conduct our lives and experience intimately our moment. This moment which has no boundary. Look around for it. Is there a boundary to be perceived anywhere in this moment? Is there even a moment? It's just one continuous moment. So this question, and the way that I titled this talk is, what is perfect? It's kind of like a mantra. What is perfect? So if we were to carry this as a mantra into the now, tonight and tomorrow, we can look with fresh eyes into the perfection of this moment, the completeness of this moment, not a hair's breadth deviation to be seen or felt or smelled or tasted anywhere. It's altogether perfectly composed, just as it is in its continual changing nature. When we practice with the koan of the mantra rather of perfection, we let go of any demand, and it's a state of openness and receptivity. So in the coming weeks, we're going to be looking into the specific paramitas a bit more. And the more we apply them to our own experience, the more our understanding opens up, because we're not here for idealized practice. It's very easy to fall into some idea of an idealized practice where we try to match ourselves to the ideal, to become a hero of enormous proportions, unreachable proportions. Instead, we reach into our own life circumstances. This is it. This is our temple. We reach into our own dispositions, our own life circumstances to see the actuality and work with the boundless possibilities that spring from this deep spring right under our feet. When we get really entranced by our habitual way of narrating our life, the possibilities shut down. And we only see what we're used to. But when we open it up to the perfection of the moment and relax thoroughly into the unfolding, the possibilities are enormous. Realizing the potency of patience, of generosity, of morality, of vigor, and concentration, and wisdom, and skillful means, and vow, and spiritual power and knowledge. Not as something that we gain with practice, but something that reveals itself as what animates our life from this very source, the offering of grace. We all have the capacity to realize intimately our own true normality, where we arrive at the state of unaffected ordinariness. Independent of our worn out cliches and narratives about freedom. That word is so worn out. So the perfection of the moment enables us to kind of taste the reality rather than the conceptual, the concept of freedom. Moment by moment, the things of the world and the Buddha Dharma can be experienced as one wholeness that's infinite in possibilities. And this is exactly the right place to exert our effort. This is exactly how we exert our effort. Not imagining some idea of perfection, something specific that we need to match, but simply the relaxed entire embodiment of our true condition and everything that it allows us to be when we are not in opposition to our life.